Ang blue of GMA is underway. Yeah, no, I think is Diana there online there? Yeah. Where did we get them? Iya pa na. Sige ba?
Iya come business Andy.
Si Angel. Oh, man. What are you? The others are online.
Nice.
I apply yung sa course.
Ano?
I apply yung sa course.
Wala nga akong tanong.
Wait, this is...
Anong ginagawa ko dito?
Okay. Right. Mic test, mic test. For the people online, number one, thank you for coming. And number two, are we audible here from Baku?
Yes, you are, JL.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hannah. About the others, are we audible here? Yes,
Iya. Eco business.
Dimigay. Dimigay.
Yang kalkulation.
Si tagamit na tapos sa ma'am Sir Mark lines. We ready? Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Leo Algo, and I'll be the moderator for this particular media briefing. I am the National Coordinator of Action Klima Pilipinas, and we would like to thank you, our media colleagues, on-site and online, for joining us as we present the perspective of representatives of Philippine civil society groups and communities regarding key issues to be addressed, expectations, aspirations, and calls to parties and the Philippine government regarding the 29th Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC. We would like to acknowledge the presence of our media colleagues, Ms. Lou Albano from GMA News Online, Ms. Iya Gozum of Rappler, Ms. Angelique Cantillana from GSCC, and Ms. Hannah Fernandez of Eco Business. Other media colleagues have confirmed that they will join shortly as well. So for this particular media briefing, we are joined by 6 representatives from Philippine civil society and community groups representing different sectors, generations, and issues of focus. So we would like to introduce them briefly first. First, we have here on our panel today, the Executive Director of Greenpeace Southeast Asia and former Head of Delegation of the Philippine Government to COPS, Mr. Nadirev Sanya. We also have here for our call the National Coordinator of the Philippine Movement for Climate Justice and also representing the Global Campaign to Demand Climate Justice, or DCJ, Mr. Ian Rivera. We also have here the Communications Officer of Tebteba Foundation and representing Indigenous peoples and local communities, Ms. Helen Magata. We also have here for our call representing Workers for Just Transition, and Tukluhan ng Manggagawang Pilipino, Mr. Rafael Abacan. Also here is the Deputy Executive Director for the Center for Energy, Ecology, and Development, Attorney Avril de Torres, and the current national convener of Action Klima Pilipinas and the executive director of Living Laudato Si Philippines, Mr. Rodney Galicia. So we will give each of our speakers 5 minutes to present their perspectives and insights about COP29. And then afterwards, we will open the floor to all of our media colleagues to pose your questions directly to one or all of our speakers. So now, we would like to start by giving the floor to Mr. Yeb Sanyo.
Thank you, JL. At magandang umaga sa mga nasa Baco, magandang hapon na dyan sa Manila. Ako si Yeb Sanyo from Philippines, Southeast Asia. Tulad ng nabanggit ni JL kanina, dati rin po akong ambassador para sa Pilipinas. As we sit here today in Baco, alam naman natin dyan sa mga kababayan natin ay nararanasan na naman yung pananalasa ng isang malakas na bagyo. Isang bagyo, Typhoon Ophel, Super Typhoon Ophel, which accelerated from a Category 1 storm into a Category 4 storm in a matter of hours. Isa rin ito sa mga bagyo na 4 na bagyo sabay-sabay ngayon in the Western Pacific Basin. The first time in history since cyclones were recorded in the Western Pacific Basin. 4 typhoons with a name are happening simultaneously. This is an anomaly in the climate system and obviously a result of the inaction of world leaders, in particular those from the rich countries, from the developed countries. And that is why as we contemplate on the suffering and the struggle of our country at ng mga communities at mga kababayan natin, lalo na sa northern part ng ating bansa, malinaw na malinaw yung dapat mangyari dito sa Baco at COP29 at imperative no, na yung mga delegado dito, the leaders that have arrived here, recognize the dire nature of the climate crisis and the urgency with which they need to act or the whole world needs to act. Alam din po natin na marami pinag-usapan dito sa Baco. This is COP29 and this has been going on for a long time, trying to find a lasting solution to the climate crisis. And the key that unlocks all of these negotiations is really the money, finance. Simula pa po yan, matagal na po rin tayong sumusubaybay dito sa proseso na to. Kaya nadindelay lahat ng ambition dito. Kaya nagtuturuan kung sinong gagawa ng mas malaking aksyon dahil hindi talaga nakikita yung sinseridad ng mga mayayaman na bansa pagdating sa pag-provide ng climate finance. And that is an obligation that they have, a commitment that they made many times, and these promises have been broken many times as well. So while the collective quantified goal, the new target is the centerpiece of COP29, I want to emphasize a couple of things that are also key items in the agenda here that we need to pay attention to. Well, lahat tayo pag-usapan natin yung finance at hindi tayo pwede umalis ng Baco nang walang kalinawan doon sa kung gaano kalaki, what is the scale, and hopefully may quantitative figure yan kung gaano kalaki yung bagong pangako, yung target. Kung anong itsura nito, what is the structure, ano yung kasali dito, what is the scope, ang gusto natin kasama lahat ng dapat pwede natin gawin, lalo na bilang bansa. Nandiyan yung mitigation, adaptation, at yung loss and damage. Pag pinag-usapan itong mga epekto ng extreme climate events, hindi na nga tayo maka-adapt. Kaya importante yung loss and damage na makasama dyan sa usapin ng pagbubuo ng bagong target on finance. Pero papayagan ninyo kung pumunta sa dalawa pang aspeto ng isa pang aspeto bukod sa loss and damage na pinag-usapan din dito in the context of how the Philippines has been instrumental in this process, katulad ng pag-anunsyo na ang Pilipinas ay pag-host ng board ng Loss and Damage Fund. Magiging lip service po yung pag-host ng Pilipinas ng Loss and Damage Fund kung hindi natin ipaglalaban bilang bansa yung actual na salapi na papasok dito sa loss and damage fund, no? At yan po yung kailangan makita natin sa delegation ng Philippines dito sa Baku na isulong yung interest ng bansa sa pamamagitan ng pagsisiguro na itong loss and damage ay may actual na pondong papasok. Hindi lamang itulak sa board ng Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage itong usapin na ito, kundi siguraduhin na doon mismo sa new collective quantified goal on finance ay hindi pag-drop off the table itong loss and damage. And the last point I wanted to discuss is the third most important area of negotiations right here is yung Article 6, tinatawag na Article 6, and that relates to cooperative approaches. In many respects, this is about carbon offsets and carbon markets. You know, carbon offsets is a dangerous distraction dahil ginagamit yan ng mga malalaking bansa para hindi na sila magbawas ng emissions. Bagkus sila ay hahanap ng paraan para suhulan ang masyado sigurong strong yung suhol, pero bayaran yung kanilang emissions sa pamamagitan ng pag-offset nito, lalo na sa land use and forest sector. Hindi natin ito pwedeng payagan, no? Dahil dangerous itong mga offsets. Countries that are obstructing also transparency, kasi nangyayari naman na po ito, no? Yung trading, no? Yung carbon trading. So dapat magkaroon ng rules. Yan ang pinag-uusapan ngayon sa Baku. Ano yung rules that will govern the trading of credits and the governance of these carbon markets. Kung tatanungin niyo ako, walang puwang ang carbon offsets sa paglutas ng climate crisis. At yung mga nag-obstruct sa transparency and clear review process dito at integrity ng usapin na ito ay sila mismo yung nag-undermine ng trust in the process at sinasabotahin nila mismo itong tsansa natin para itong cooperative approaches yung pwedeng pag-usapan ng mga bansa bukod dun sa kanilang ginagawa domestically ay maging successful. So yun lamang po, maraming salamat for the opportunity to express our views and to share this panel with our esteemed colleagues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yabsanyo. We would like now to give the floor to Mr. Ian Rivera for his thoughts about COP29.
Okay. Magandang umaga or hapon sa ating lahat. Maganda na nabigyan ng emphasis sa pananalita ni Jim, yung mga important points. I would like to more give stress to the importance that this COP, which is the Climate Finance COP, should be also a COP that should deliver public financing to all the to address not just the energy transition, but the necessary loss and damage, the adaptation, and the just transition that's really, really important, particularly for developing and developing countries. So why I am saying this, because as we all know, the market mechanism, the language of market mechanism, again appeared in Article 6, as what has been mentioned, that hindi talaga malulutas ang problema at pagtugon ng climate crisis sa usapin ng solusyon sa merkado, solusyon ng mga market-based solution, lalo na yung pinatawag ng mga market mechanism. What for the needed rapid just transition to clean and renewables, ay kailangan ang fast and rapid financing na magagawa lang ng public finance. Bakit mahalaga ang public finance sa climate finance, which is the heart, lalo na nagpapasokan na mga usapin ng market mechanism? Because we don't only need climate finance for the energy transition. While the energy transition, we need climate finance for the shift, to the rapid shift to clean renewables. We also need climate finance to phase out fossil fuels. Since as I am speaking, patuloy pa rin ang pagpapatayo ng mga fossil fuel infrastructures. In fact, based on the 2023 IPCC study, the fossil fuel infrastructures is 300 times more than the remaining carbon budget for 1.5. So we need those not to be constructed, and we need those existing na dapat ma-phase out na. Lalo na nasa sa kahapon ay naaprubahan na yung gas bills. And that's another question why it was approved. We also need a climate finance for adaptation, loss and damage, and just transition. So in relation to the collective positions of developing countries of 1.3 trillion US dollars, dapat talaga may paglaban yan. But I would like also to emphasize that still it is not enough. And the global campaign to demand climate justice, we are calling for 5 trillion US dollars so that itong mga mahalagang tugunan na resulta ng climate crisis ay matugunan. Yung usapin ng energy transition, binanggit na kanina, yung adaptation, loss and damage, at saka yung just transition. Sana the Philippine government will hold on the line and not give in to the divide and tactics rules of the northern governments, lalo na sa mga karanasan natin sa mga previous stops. At the end of, as we go to the end game, the developing countries always ends up with an empty bag.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ian Rivera. Now, we would like to give the floor next to Attorney Avril de Torres.
Maraming salamat, JL, at magandang umaga sa lahat at hapon sa mga kasama sa na nasa Pilipinas. Para sa amin sa Center for Energy Ecology and Development, as we near the conclusion of week 1 of the climate negotiations, we see a dark cloud looming over climate action in the Philippines. And so it's difficult to be hopeful. Bakit natin sinasabi yun, no? Nung nagsimula, day 1 of climate negotiations, alam natin na ipasa na ng Senado on final reading ang bill for the development of downstream gas. And now, midway of week 1, inadopt ng House of Representatives in full ang version ng Senate. And so, in a few days, when we come back to the Philippines, we will have in place a law that will fully promote and open the floodgates for gas and LNG in our shores. Among the most concerning provisions doon ay sinasabi, no, mandated na po lahat ng ating mga distribution utilities na patuloy na taasan ang binibiling LNG para sa ating kuryente. Alam natin kung anong ibig sabihin nito, hindi lang sa climate ambition natin at action natin, pero pati na rin, no, sa pagmahal at pagiging unreliable ng ating kuryente. Kahapon, nalaman din natin na ang Philippine National Oil Corporation ay nag-enter na into a preliminary agreement with Indonesia's Pertamina for the development of the LNG market. Indonesia is, alongside Malaysia, among the biggest LNG exporters in Southeast Asia. And the Philippines being a new player in the market, this is very concerning for us na magkakaroon na ng collaboration kung paano pa masisusulong ang LNG. At nung bandang simula ng taong ito, ang head of delegation natin dito sa climate negotiations, also, as we know, Secretary of Environment and Natural Resources, entered into an agreement with the 3 biggest gas expansionists in the country to protect the Verde Island Passage, which is the center of gas expansion in the country. These are very concerning developments also as it comes in the heels of the re-election of Trump. We already know na ito ay nakakabahala pagdating sa pag-rollback on climate action and financing. Pero alam din natin that the US last year is the world's largest exporter of LNG. Pinapasadahan ko lang no, yung mga nakakabahalang development on gas sa Pilipinas as we come to the negotiations, because here we talk about copying a finance COP and securing finance with all of our guidelines on quantitative and qualitative requirements to finance climate action and justice for mitigation, adaptation, loss, and damage. But we ask, what for? If we know that in the home front, we cannot expect more ambitious nationally determined contributions. We cannot expect a more rapid transition to renewable energy if we are promoting another false solution in the form of gas. Of course, we welcome that the Philippine delegation comes here with a position of demanding 1.3 trillion for climate finance in the form of public finance. But we also welcome that this is based on a needs assessment report. But considering the lack of a genuine consultation prior to the COP, it's difficult to determine saan ba mapupunta yon. And yun naman yung mahalaga sa atin bilang bansa na napaka-vulnerable sa lumalalang krisis sa klima. That the financing goes into transitioning away from fossil fuels and prioritizing genuine solutions in the form of renewable energy and the related infrastructure that's needed for that, that's grid and battery storage, at hindi yung ganitong mga maruruming enerhiya. And we say this because specifically in the context of the Philippines, SEED commissioned a report from Climate Analytics last year. And this was one of the main points of discussion with the Philippine delegation last year as we shared to them that according to this report that models a pathway for the power sector of the Philippines, it is entirely feasible for us to transition to renewable energy and align to the 1.5 pathway. It will reduce the levelized cost of electricity by 2030 compared to the scenario from the Department of Energy, and it will generate 5 to 7 times more jobs compared to the business as usual and clean energy scenario of the Philippines. And so it is possible for us to have higher and a more ambitious and enhanced NDC. It's good that we're calling for ambitious financing, or we have an ambitious starting point, a starting point for demands for finance. Pero saan ba mapupunta kung may maipanalo tayo dito pagbalik natin sa Pilipinas? Huling punto na lang po, ngayong umaga lang, we also launched a report looking into the expansion of coal, gas, and renewable energy in Southeast Asia. We also want to highlight, no, para may onti namang a glimmer of hope, although it's quite difficult. When we look at renewable energy expansion in Southeast Asia, as a region, we are very ambitious and we have the political will to advance it. We have over 390 gigawatts planned. These are mainly solar and wind. And when we look at who are developing and who are financing, mainly domestic players. So the East Asian and global north firms that have historically contributed to fossil fuel dependency in our region and now also supporting gas expansion in our region are lacking participation in renewable energy development. So this should be part of our demands here, no, na tulungan tayo sa ating pag-mitigate, pag-adapt, and of course reparations for loss and damage should be paid. And any success here, if at all, should translate to flowing into renewable energy and related infrastructures back home. Salamat po.
Thank you very much, Attorney Avril de Torres of SEED. Before we continue, we'd like to take this opportunity to also acknowledge the arrival of our other media colleagues on site and online. Ms. Imelda Abano from the Earth Journalism Network. We also like to acknowledge Biena Magbitang of Climate Tracker. And we also would like to acknowledge another colleague of ours, Mr. Edmar de los Santos, who is also, I think, currently undergoing with Climate Tracker Asia. Okay. So now, we'd like to hear next from Ms. Helen Magata.
Magandang umaga po sa ating mga kaibigan dito sa Baco, and also good afternoon to our friends back home in the Philippines. So I'm Helen Magata. I work with the Taba Foundation, but I'm also here on behalf of the Indigenous Peoples Constituency, one of the 9 constituencies under the UNFCCC. We are following closely the new collective quantified goal, especially in relation to Indigenous peoples. So in the context of progressing of Article 9, kasi pinag-uusapan pa rin dito kung ano ba ang climate finance. And we insist, of course, that climate finance, Article 9 outlines the responsibility of the developed countries to provide new, scaled up, adequate, and predictable financial public funds via grants to meet commitments for mitigation and adaptation, and also taking into account the needs for loss and damage, katulad ng sinabi ni Sir Yep kanina. For Indigenous peoples, financial mechanisms continue to be very restricted, complicated, insufficient, and project-based, short-term. And that is not, we think that is not responding to climate justice, because on the one hand, we are saying that significant remaining biodiversity are being stewarded by Indigenous peoples. Pero, sinasabi din ng research na in the past 10 years, less than 1% of climate adaptation and mitigation fund has been accessed or flowed to Indigenous peoples directly. So, sino dapat ang magbabayad? Who should pay? These are the questions that are being discussed in the NCQG. Of course, we are urging the developed countries historically responsible for climate crisis to pay reparations for the climate threat, and also ramp up their pledges to include allocated funding for their Indigenous peoples within their countries. In terms of quantification, we support for increased target, pero beyond the quantity, we also want to look at the quality of finance. Where is the money going? At paano ito nadidisperse? And why are we calling for direct access? Dahil, what is direct access? This is the question that we are always being asked as Indigenous peoples. And for Indigenous peoples, direct access means eliminating as much as possible intermediaries, including the government, unnecessary bureaucracies, and punitive access modalities. Ito yung karanasan ng maraming Indigenous peoples and even local communities and women organizations, for instance. And why direct access? Because direct and equitable funding for Indigenous peoples will facilitate implementation of long-term climate mitigation and adaptation strategies, and they will also have their agency practice their self-determination in terms of responding to loss and damage. Ever so often, nakikita natin dito sa UNFCCC, laging sinasabi na there's an increasing flow of climate finance to developing countries. But Indigenous peoples are often lost in aggregates. Hindi natin naririnig sa reporting. And this is what we are calling for in the NCQG. And while the countries are debating what climate finance is, we also would want to put forward what climate finance should not be. So nabanggit kanina ni Sir Yep, yung climate, we are concerned that itong Article 6.4 is now going to be used as a leverage to say that, it can be a source of climate financing. So climate financing should not include contributions that are derived, tied to, or perpetuate violations of Indigenous people's rights, as enshrined in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Climate finance should not include public loans provided at market rates. Also, we have heard financing that are channeled through developed countries' export credit agencies, dapat hindi po ito kasama. And yeah, finance generated by carbon markets, offsets, and geoengineering. Using climate finance to fund projects such as extraction of energy transition. I think it was also mentioned a while ago, for clean energy technologies that are part of the just transition to renewable energy systems that cause environmental destruction, freshwater contamination and depletion, evictions, land grabbing, and criminalization of indigenous peoples and human rights defenders must not be included and counted as climate finance in the definition of climate finance. And lastly, achieving climate justice can only be achieved when those contribute the most climate crisis. Again, provide this new, additional, direct, adequate, and equitable, giving priority to countries and people that are most vulnerable and who have contributed least to the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Helen Magata. And up next, we would like to hear now from Dr. Rafael Abac.
Magandang umaga po. Magandang hapon po sa mga kasama natin sa Pilipinas. I'm here as a representative of Workers for Just Transition and the Bukluran ng Manggagawang Pilipino. Kami po ay bahagi po ng kilusang manggagawa na tumutulak po, sumusulong sa just transition, isang rapid, just, equitable transition po patungo sa isang fossil fuel-free na mundo. Para po sa amin, bilang kasama ng kilusang manggagawa, ginigit namin na hindi dapat binabayaran ng manggagawa ang bill para sa just transition. Para sa amin po, may dalawang version ng transition. May version ng mga transition ng mga kapitalista at mga mayabang bansa, at ang just transition naman po ng kilusang manggagawa sa buong mundo. Hindi dapat binabayaran ng mga manggagawa ang bill ng transition na to. Ang aming mga demands na sinusulong namin dito sa COP29 ay ang agarang moratorium sa paggamit ng mga fossil fuels tulad ng coal. Subalit nakikita natin na nag-expand palalo ang coal projects dito sa Pilipinas. Ang pagbubuo ng komprehensibong plano para sa pagtatapos ng mga industriya ng fossil fuel at pagpapaunlad ng renewable energy sources at guaranteed na trabaho at subsidy para sa mga manggagawa na maapektuhan ng transition na to. Hindi katanggap-tanggap na may mga manggagawa na magsasuffer dahil po sa transition na hindi just. Katulad ng nakikita natin na problema sa jeepney phase-out. At isinusulong din natin ang democratic control sa pangasiwa ng sistema ng enerhiya. Dapat involved po at nangunguna ang kilusang manggagawa sa mga desisyon tungkol sa energy mix natin. Dapat nangunguna sila doon sa pagsulong ng pagbabago para po sa kinabukasan natin lahat. At iginigit namin na ang manggagawa lang mismo ang siyang puwersa na may kakayahan na gawin ito. Sa sistemang kapitalismo, naging source ng problema natin sa klima, in which historically ang may pinakamalaking burden ay ang mga developed first world nations. Para po sa amin, ang manggagawa na nagiging source ng value na ginagamit ng mga kapitalista ay ang siyang may kakayahan na i-withhold ito at isulong ang lipunan natin patungo sa isang just at sustainable future. Kinigit namin na kasama din po ng demands ng mga manggagawa ay isang transition na may kaakibat na pagbabayad ng mayayamang bansa sa kanilang utang sa climate finance. Sinusuportahan namin ang mga panawagan dito patungo sa $5 trillion bilang panimulang pagbabayad sa utang nila every year po from the global north to the global south. sinusulong din namin ang pagtigil sa genocide, at apartheid at climate colonialism. Para po sa amin, kung may kakayahan ng mga mayamang bansa na bumili ng bilyones in Hellfire missiles, in white phosphorus, in all the elements and the arms for war, kaya nila na bayaran ang utang nila para po may chance tayong mabuhay. Para po sa amin, dapat hindi po ginagamit ang COP na to para sa greenwashing. Dapat hindi tayo naniniwala sa mga false solutions katulad ng LNG. Dapat maging totoo tayo kung ano ba talaga ang kailangan natin ayon sa siyensya. Dapat meron din tayong expansion ng public services, pag-angat ng estado ng kabuhayan ng mga public workers, public sector workers. Sinusulong din namin na walang climate justice kung walang gender justice. Dapat wala pong gender pay gap mula sa kalalakihan, kababaihan. At dapat meron din pong unconditional cancellation of debts ng Global South for economic and climate justice. Yun po, komprehensibo po ang demands ng mga kilusang manggagawa para po sa COP29 na to. Dahil para po sa amin, ang manggagawa mismo ang may kakayahan na gawin nito. Ilaman po, maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rafael Abacan. And for our final speaker for this media briefing, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Rodney Galicia.
Maraming salamat. Para naman po sa Action Klima, bilang sa nagko-coordinate ng mga pag-uusap sa mga civil society organizations, indigenous peoples organizations, sa mga sektor na nandito sa COP29 at pati na din sa pamahalaan. We appreciate na nagkaroon ng konsultasyon ang delegasyon ng Pilipinas sa COP29 bago pa man pumunta dito sa Azerbaijan, sa Baku. Uning marami ang posisyon mula sa mga sektor at mula sa mga komunidad na ating pinagsisilbihan at mga ecosystems na ating pinoprotektahan. Dahil po tayo first week pa lang at pang-apat na araw at nagkaroon tayo ng request na makipag-usap muli sa ating Philippine delegation. Ang trabaho po natin dito ay magkaroon ng tulay ang ating mga pamayanan doon sa ating bansa at dito na rin sa pag-uusap sa iba't ibang mga aspeto ng work streams ng negosasyon tungkol sa krisis sa klima. Sinisigurado po natin na ang mga posisyon at ang mga hinaing ng ating mga komunidad ay siguradong mapakikinggan at mailagay sa posisyon ng ating pamahalaan. Tayo po ay hopeful na makipag-usap muli ang ating pamahalaan sa mga civil society organizations, sa mga indigenous peoples at sa mga sektor. Dahil alam naman natin na kung meron ng posisyon ng pamahalaan na napag-usapan, bago pa man pumunta dito, ito ay maaaring mag-iba at lalo sa mga estratehiya at yung mga kaparaanan dahil nag-iiba ang mga pag-usap dito. Maraming mga pressures, maraming mga impluensya na maaaring makapagbago ng mga posisyon o kaya yung paraan upang maipabot ang mensahe at posisyon ng ating bansa sa mga nagkakaisang bansa sa iba pang mga parties to the agreement. At tayo pa yung maasa na bago matapos ang first week, yung isang linggong ito, nung pag-uusap sa Azerbaijan, ay tanggapin yung ating imbitasyon o kayong ating hiling na umupong muli ang delegasyon ng Pilipinas mula sa pamahalaan at ang mga sektor na naandito upang siguraduhin na ang posisyon, ang hinaing at ang pananaw ng ating mga komunidad sa grassroots doon sa kanayunan ay mailagay din at may siguraduhin mailagay sa posisyon ng ating bansa. Dahil sa pagkatapos ng negosasyon na ito, babalik ulit tayo at sino yung magtatrabaho. Hindi lamang po yung mga LGUs, kundi ang burden dito ay sa mga sektor ulit at sa ating mga pamayanan. Kaya ang isang panawagan po ng mga civil society organizations, sana ay umupong muli ang mga sektor na nandito at ang pamahalaan upang magkaroon ng dialogue, upang siguraduhin na just, fair, para sa communities we serve and ecosystems we protect yung magiging posisyon ng ating bansa. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rodney Galicia. And now that we've heard from all of our speakers for this morning, we are now formally opening the floor for the questions for our media colleagues on site and online. Who would like to ask their questions? We acknowledge Ms. Imelda Abano for her question.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning po. Yung Argentina government has withdrawn from the COP29 negotiations yesterday. We've heard that. So it's largely parang symbolic, no, in terms of critical conversations on climate action. So gusto ko lang malaman kung kasi aside from Argentina, marami pang mga ibang countries na nag-pull out from the negotiations. Gusto ko lang malaman kung anong implication nito sa climate action, especially sa implication nito sa Philippines.
Would anyone from our panel like to respond? Yes, Mr. Rodney Galicia.
Alam natin na ang isang konteksto nito ay dahil sa pamamahala doon sa Argentina na yung kanilang pinuno ay may mga pagdududa sa mga ginagawa dito sa negosasyon, no? At dahil nga ay parang conspiracy yung tinitingnan noon, no? Pero ang mensahe nito ay dahil alam natin, no, hindi lamang ito sa Argentina at inaasahan natin na ang Estados Unidos ay maaaring umurong din, no, sa susunod pang mga pag-uusap. Pero ang sa atin naman, no, kahit na merong mga umalis sa negosasyon at inaasahang meron pang mga ibang magkakaroon ng kanilang manifestasyon, kailangang tumayo, lalong-lalo ng Pilipinas, dito sa usapin na ito dahil alam natin na yung mga losses and damages at iba pang mga issues ay dapat pagtayuan ng ating bansa. Ang implikasyon nito ay magiging, hindi ito dapat magkaroon ng hopelessness, no? Dapat ay pag-ibayuhin pa. Lalong-lalo na nung ating mga partners sa Argentina, ng mga civil society organization, we are in solidarity with them, pati na rin sa Latin America dahil alam natin sa COP30 sa Brazil ay doon mangyayari yung masusunod na negosasyon. We are in solidarity with our civil society partners, but this will serve actually as not as hindi magkakaroon ng parang disappointment para sa atin. Pag-ibayuhin natin, mas pag-ibayuhin natin ang ating tayo dito sa negosasyon na ito kahit na meron pang umuulong. Maraming salamat.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
There are implications, and I hope that these implications of countries pulling out from the processes will be is judged on the national interest of these countries. But there's also, like as I've said, in terms of this negotiation, there's also a very important aspect that we need to guard because kung walang pagbabantay, raising the national interest of the developing countries, like countries of the Philippines, ay baka lalong masama ang kinatatnan ng mga ng proseso at pag-uusap na ito. Nalala natin, di ba? Lahat tayo nandoon yata sa COP15 when during when Paris Agreement ay nabuo. Ang developing countries, vulnerable countries, ang nagpanday doon sa usapin ng 1.5. Kung wala tayo doon, ay we will end up with a very, very 2 degrees na alam natin na hindi tayo magsusurvive. Kaya it should be the national interest that we should protect us, and I hope the Philippine government and also the parties of representing the developing countries should assert the national interest in these negotiations.
All right, thank you to Mr. Rodney Galicia and Mr. Ian Rivera for their responses. There is a question sent to us online by Ms. Iya Gozum of Rappler, and please allow me to read it. She's mentioned that the $100 billion target the predecessor to the NCQG failed. And she would like to ask our panelists here, what are the learnings that the countries here at COP29 should have learned in setting the new climate finance goal in terms of mechanisms, sources of funding or financing, and regulations to ensure that the rich developed countries can follow through on the NCQG? Would anyone like to respond? Okay, Ms. Helen Magata.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a difficult question. Actually, my initial reaction is that did countries really learn a lesson? We know that the $100 billion US dollar the 100 billion target was not achieved in 2020. Some reports say it was sometime in 2021 and 2022 when it was achieved. But again, if there's maybe one lesson that we can learn from in this process is that what is the method of monitoring and tracking and really reporting? What are the indicators of reporting? One example is that, again, for indigenous peoples, there are no metrics and agreed indicators in terms of what to report and how to report it. And so that's why we're also calling the countries to look at the timeline of when it should be delivered. And of course, we're saying that should be delivered in 2025 already, with reviews to be done after 5 years, so that it's in sync with the global stock take. So the global stock take is very clear. It provides the overall framework, but in terms of operationalizing how to report, what to report, and how in-country stakeholders are also going to contribute in terms of reporting and monitoring, that should be one.
Thank you, Ms. Helen Magata. Another question from one of our online media colleagues, Ms. Hannah Fernandez of Eco Business, also regarding the NCQG negotiations. Her question is, what are your thoughts on the current NCQG negotiations deadlock? And she also would like to ask our panelists, what are your thoughts if no agreement on the NCQG is set here at COP29, and what would the implications be for the Philippines? Would anyone like to answer the question? Mr. Yeb Sanya would like to answer.
Thank you, Hannah. Well, I like to look at it from two angles. One is myself, who has been in the process for a long time, and one who has faith in humanity. If you look at the process based on experience, it's too early to be making any conclusions on the fourth day of the first week. And that's always been the case. In the last 28 COPs, you don't really see anything clear on the fourth day. So huwag tayo mawala ng pag-asa dahil pang-apat na araw pala. On the other hand, yung sinasabi niya na paano kung walang mangyari? Maraming beses na rin na walang nangyari sa mga COP. So hindi siya extraordinary that we might not have a good outcome from Baku. Pero ano implication sa Pilipinas? Alam naman natin for countries like the Philippines, any delay dito sa progreso ng particularly on climate finance ay tayo na agrabyado. Palala ng palala yung sitwasyon natin at hindi tayo, at lalong nadidelay yung mobilization, nadidelay yung provision ng finance, nadidelay yung access natin, at nadidelay yung pagtanggap natin ng ganitong resources. And sinong talo dito? Lahat tayo talo dito. Buong mundo talo dito dahil hindi natin, we're losing the required time, we're racing against time to actually avert what is already a crisis. Diba? So palala ng palala yung mga climate impacts, palala ng palala yung kahirapan sa ating bansa, palala ng palala yung takbo ng kalakaran kung paanong napoprotektahan yung ating mga kababayan. Kaya talo talaga lahat. Ganun ang magiging implikasyon niya. Pero for someone who's been a negotiator for a long time, hindi ako nagpapanik sa first week kasi alam naman natin na the second week is where you will see some more clarity on where it will land. Unfortunately, for majority of the COPs, it really doesn't land where we want it to be. Ganun naman tayo, lagi tayong umuuwing luhaan, pero hindi tayo umuuwing luhaan na nagpapatalo. We remain defiant, kahit na sino pang mga delegation ng matras dito, kahit na sino pang nananalo sa mga eleksyon sa iba-ibang bansa, we remain defiant because we have no choice but to be defiant and to stand up for our future at para sa mga kababayan natin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yabsanyo. We would like to give a couple of minutes for one of our CSO colleagues here in Baku to provide a short statement. I would like to introduce Mr. Julius Kainten from Workers for Just Transition as well.
Salamat po. Julius Kainlet po, Workers from Just Transition at saka Federation of Free Workers. Sa mga delegasyon po ay bahagi rin po tayo ng malawak na trade union delegation composed of affiliates ng International Trade Union Confederation at saka ng mga Global Union Federations and of course yung po mga local networks at sa Pilipinas tulad po ng Workers for Just Transition. Siguro po ang pwede nating ipabaon lang din ay ano yung mangyari dito sa negosasyon sa COP ay patuloy din naman yung ating mga laban sa loob ng ating bansa. At patuloy din tayong may iba't ibang mga windows na pwedeng pagpuna ng pag-asa. Although we're not putting all our hopes there, no? Kasi po halimbawa, there are opportunities open to the Philippines. For example po, ginawang global accelerator country ang Pilipinas. Ngayon, bagamat ito po ay magpo-promote ng trabaho at saka ng social protection, at meron po ginagawang pag-ugnay nito sa usaping pang-klima, and we don't know to what extent po yung supportang may bibigay sa atin. Pero these are opportunities that we can take advantage of. Pangalawa, naringgan ko rin po sa European Commission, sa OECD, na meron din daw silang global gateway na parang naglalaan ng 300 billion euros para po sa Africa at saka sa Asia. Pero siyempre po, hindi rin po natin ganap na maasahan ito dahil looking at how it was presented now, most of the investments coming in ay through private institutions. At alam naman po natin, sa ating pagtugon sa problema sa pangklima, mas gusto po natin yung tinatawag na public pathway, no, na kung makakatanggap din po tayo ng tulong through grants at hindi po utang. Dahil kung ito ay utang, baka lalong mabaon tayo sa utang at tayo na nga argapyado, yung perang pinautang sa atin na pambayad, puri nila sa ginawa sa atin, ay tayo pa uli ang mapapasok sa isang cycle ng utang. So, sang-ayon po ako sa sinabi ni kasamang Yeb, no, na there might be nothing that would happen out of COP29, pero ang mahalaga po, ang mga people's organizations, sa mga civil society organizations, kasama po ng grupo ng mga manggagawa, ay patuloy na maniningil sa Global North, patuloy na maniningil sa namamayagpag na corporate greed to make sure that they pay up for what they have done to us. Salamat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Julius Kainten. We still have time for one final quick question from our media colleagues before we conclude this press conference. Would anyone from our media colleagues on site or online pose one final quick question? Ms. Lou Albano, please go ahead.
Good morning. This is for Sir Yel. Follow-up lang doon sa sinabi niyo kanina, Sir, na karaniwan sa COP, hindi naglaland yung ating mga claim. Ano yung least acceptable para sa CSO ng Pilipinas?
Salamat, Lou. Least acceptable, ibig sabihin, sorry, inaanpa ko lang yung ibig sabihin ng least acceptable. Kasi maraming ibig sabihin ng least acceptable. Pinakaayaw natin, ibig sabihin. Pinakaayaw natin, syempre mangyari ay, minsan pinag-usapan yung, do you want a bad deal or no deal? So ang tanong sa atin, anong pipiliin natin doon? minsan mas mahirap yung bad deal. No? Kasi pagka sinement natin ang isang bad deal, nakalaki na tayo doon. And that's probably one of the, probably I would imagine the least acceptable for, not just for Philippine civil society, but in general, the climate justice movement globally. That we come out of Baco with a very bad deal. No? A deal, for example, that has no public finance in it. A deal that does not give you clarity on the quantum or the scale of finance. A deal that is instead of rapid public finance provided, it's about investor mobilization, and that's not going to work for us. No? So isa pang masamang posibleng outcome dito na ayaw natin mangyari is yung total abandonment ng commitment na mag-provide talaga ng finance so that the entire world can actually pursue solutions to the climate crisis. Alam natin na pwedeng pag-usapan dito barya-barya. Hindi tayo makikinabang doon dahil there's no jobs on a dead planet. There's no debating around how you adapt to a planet that is running away, that has run away climate change.
Thank you very much, everyone. And we will now close the floor for questions from our media colleagues as we are out of time. Before we conclude, we just have two quick announcements. The first would come from Mr. Ian Rivera.
Thank you, JL. I would like to take this opportunity for this action that will happen globally and also in the Philippines. This is the action led by COP29 Coalition on the Global Campaign to Demand Climate Justice. It's a mobilization to pressure governments and this COP29 to come up with agreements that is needed for the people on the planet. So 100 countries will mobilize tomorrow. In the Philippines, there's a mobilization happening led by more than 100 organizations. The Catholic Church already came up with a statement for the Global Day of Action signed by 98 dioceses. So 20 cities will mobilize in the Philippines and one big mobilization will happen in Quezon City. So if you want to have a copy of the statement of the Catholic Church, I can provide you through email.
Thank you, Mr. Ian Rivera. And the second quick announcement is from me. If you have any follow-up questions to any of our panelists, please communicate it to the following email address, secretariat@actionklima.org. I repeat, secretariat@actionklima.org. And we will probably organize another press briefing towards the end or after the conclusion of COP29. And we will announce further details on our Facebook page. And that formally concludes our media briefing for this morning. Thank you for attending, and we wish you the best of luck for the rest of the day and the conference.
Thank you.
Salamat. Thank you.
Good luck. Again, good job.